I never thought the person I welcomed into my home as family would be the one to betray me in the most brutal way imaginable. The air was heavy with the smell of damp stone when the door slammed shut behind me. The metallic clang of the lock echoed through the darkness, sealing me inside like a coffin. My hands pressed against the wooden panels, trembling, as I realized what had just happened. My daughter-in-law had locked me in the basement. It was not an accident. It was not a mistake. It was a deliberate act. One carried out with eyes cold, as steel and lips curled in a smile that I will never forget. She leaned in close before pushing the final bolt into place. Her voice was low, venom dripping with every word. $5 billion. That is what you are worth, and you will not live long enough to spend a penny of it. My knees weakened. My own son had once promised me that family was everything, that his wife was trustworthy. Yet here I was, stripped of my dignity, shoved into the dark heart of my own house, treated as an obstacle in their path to greed. I screamed his name, but the footsteps above me grew fainter until silence returned, leaving only my shallow breaths and the distant hum of the city outside. I had been betrayed by blood, and the battle for survival had just begun. First, panic swallowed me whole. My palms scraped across the rough stone walls as I searched for any sign of escape. The basement had always been a storage space, stacked with boxes of old memories, dusty trunks, and shelves of wine. It had never been a prison, yet that is what it had become. I thought of the $5 billion inheritance. My late husband's empire had been built brick by brick, through years of sacrifice, sweat, and relentless determination. We had agreed that it would one day pass to our son, but only under the guidance of integrity. What I never expected was that his wife would try to steal it, believing that eliminating me was the only way to clear her path. The betrayal cut deeper than the darkness surrounding me. My mind raced back to the subtle warnings I had ignored. Her sudden interest in financial documents, the way she charmed lawyers, her insistence on handling family matters herself. My instincts had whispered that something was wrong, but I silenced them in the name of family peace. Now, trapped behind a locked door, I realized my mistake could cost me my life. The sound of laughter floated from above. Her voice, joined by my son's, reached my ears through the floorboards. For a moment, hope flared. Perhaps he would free me. Perhaps this was a misunderstanding. But as I pressed my ear closer, their words froze my blood. She bought it, my daughter-in-law whispered, her tone laced with triumph. She thinks she still has control. But once the lawyers declare her unfit, we take everything. The basement will keep her out of sight until then. Unfit. They were planning to paint me as unstable, senile, incapable of managing my affairs. Locking me away was only the beginning. My son's reply was faint, but clear enough to shatter me. Do it quickly. We cannot risk her ruining the transfer. If she fights us, we lose everything. My own flesh and blood. A wave of nausea swept over me. The boy I raised, the one who clung to me after scraped knees and broken hearts, was now complicit in my imprisonment. He was willing to erase me for money, but despair was a luxury I could not afford. If they thought locking me in the basement would silence me, they had gravely underestimated me. I forced my breathing to slow, my hands brushing over old crates until my fingers wrapped around something sharp. A broken shard of wood from a splintered chair leg. Crude, but better than nothing. I held it tightly, not just as a weapon, but as a reminder that I was not defenseless. As I crouched in the shadows, I whispered to myself, you survived worse. You will survive this. Hours passed like days. The only light came from a thin slit near the ceiling, a window that revealed nothing but the faint glow of the street lamps outside. Hunger gnawed at me, thirst scraped my throat raw, yet my mind remained sharper than ever. Every sound above me was a clue. Every creak of the floorboards, every muffled word, every burst of laughter told me their plan was moving forward. I memorized it all. At one point, I heard her on the phone. The accounts will be cleared within the week. Once her medical papers are filed, she will not have the capacity to challenge us. By the time anyone realizes, it will be too late. Medical papers. They were not only locking me away, they were creating a false narrative, fabricating evidence to prove I was mentally unfit. The cruelty of it burned through me, but it also gave me strength. Then came the sound that changed everything. A soft click near the wall. I pressed my ear against the stone and realized that a hidden pipe carried sound from another part of the house. Through it, I could hear more than muffled whispers. I could hear full conversations if I stayed quiet enough, and what I heard next made my heart race. "They will never believe her if she escapes," my daughter-in-law said confidently. "The lawyers already have my version on record. She is unstable, paranoid, delusional. If she shows up claiming we locked her in the basement, they will laugh her out of the room. We will say she went down there herself, searching for her lost husband's ghost." The plan was flawless on paper. But she had overlooked one thing. I was listening. I sat in the darkness, my grip on the wooden shard tightening as a plan began to take shape. They thought I was powerless, that age and despair would crush me. They thought greed had made me weak. They were wrong. I was not just a mother, not just a widow. I was the last living guardian of everything my husband and I built. And if I was to be erased, I would not go quietly. When they opened the door again, they would not find a broken woman begging for mercy. They would find a mother armed with secrets, strength, and a fury they had never imagined. The shadows around me no longer felt suffocating. They felt like allies, concealing my movements as I prepared. The battle for $5 billion had begun, and I was not planning to lose. Thank you for listening to the beginning of my story. Stay with me, because what came next was darker, more shocking, and more unbelievable than anything you have heard so far. Do not forget to subscribe so you do not miss the truth that almost cost me my life. And if you have ever faced betrayal from someone you trusted, share your story in the comments below. Your voice matters. The first night in the basement taught me something I never wanted to learn. Silence is louder than screams. When my throat ached from calling my son's name, when my fist bled from pounding on the wooden door, I realized no help was coming. Silence became my companion. But silence also sharpened my ears. That was when I began to hear them. Through the thin pipe that carried whispers from the floor above, fragments of their conversations spilled into the darkness. Like poison, I crouched near the wall, pressing my ear so hard against the stone that my skin ached. At first, the words were scattered, broken. But as the hours passed, I began to hear sentences, entire plans, and what I discovered froze me to the core. Transfer. "The securities first," my daughter-in-law said, her voice calm and calculated. "The bank statements must show she authorized it before she lost her mental stability. After that, the foundation accounts will be ours." Securities. Foundation. She was talking about my husband's empire, the same one we spent decades building. For our family, she was rewriting its future, brick by brick, signature by forged signature. Then came the voice I dreaded to hear. "My sons." She always trusted me with the financial files. "No one will question my access. By the time she realizes, it will all be gone." My heart shattered again. It was not just her. It was him too. My only child. My son. The boy I raised with bedtime stories and warm meals. The one I held when his father died. The one I swore would never feel abandoned. He was not just a bystander. He was a partner in the crime against me. The memories came flooding back. Scenes that once felt like small inconveniences, now revealing themselves as carefully planned manipulations. I remembered the first time my daughter-in-law insisted on handling the lawyers. "You do not need to attend every meeting," she had said sweetly. "You should rest. Let me take care of it." At the time, I thought she was being helpful. Now I knew it was a move to exclude me, to plant herself at the center of every legal decision. Then there was the charity gala, when she urged me to donate through her channels instead of directly. "It looks better if I handle the paperwork," she had said. That night, the paperwork disappeared, and later, rumors swirled that funds were missing. I dismissed it as an accounting error. She must have counted on that. And the day my son shouted at me for the first time in his life, he accused me of being controlling, paranoid, unwilling to let him be a man. At the time, his words pierced me. But now I could see it clearly. It was rehearsed, designed to weaken my resolve, to paint me as unstable in case I ever questioned their intentions. Each memory cut deeper, but each memory also cleared the fog. I shifted on the cold concrete floor, clutching the shard of wood in my hand. The basement was not only my prison, it was my awakening. I listened harder. That was when I caught a detail that changed everything. "We cannot delay," she whispered. "The documents must show she approved the asset transfer last month. I already forged her signature on the preliminary forms. The notary believes it is authentic." Forged my signature. I pressed a trembling hand against my mouth to keep from gasping. They were not just planning to take my wealth. They had already begun. The theft was in motion, legal documents carrying my stolen name moving through banks and courts as I sat locked in the dark. And yet, what terrified me most was the calmness in their voices. They spoke not like criminals but like professionals, executing a routine job. This was not their first manipulation. This was the culmination of a pattern, a series of quiet moves I had ignored until it was too late. But then came the twist, the dagger that pierced the last pieces of my denial. She will not fight, my son said firmly. We have been planning this for years. Every doctor, every lawyer, every accountant she trusted, half of them already report to us. If she dares to challenge us, she will find herself alone. Years. They had been planning my downfall for years. The late-night whispers between them, the sudden secrecy, the way he pulled away from me. It had not been marriage troubles or personal stress. It had been a conspiracy. My own child had plotted my erasure long before the lock clicked on the basement door. The realization struck me like thunder. This was not just betrayal. This was premeditated betrayal, carefully calculated, deliberately executed. I pressed my back against the wall, clutching the shard of wood like a lifeline. My breath came in shallow bursts, but my mind raced with new clarity. They thought I was a helpless old woman, too fragile to fight, too naive to suspect. But I was listening, and every word they spoke was a weapon I could turn against them. In that moment, I made a vow. I would not let them bury me in darkness while they danced in stolen wealth. I would not let their lies become my legacy. I leaned closer to the pipe, memorizing every sentence, every detail, every plan. The basement was my prison, but it had also become my surveillance room. They had locked me in, but in their arrogance, they had forgotten that walls carry secrets to as I lay on the cold floor, waiting for the sound of footsteps. My heart was no longer filled with despair. It was filled with determination. If they wanted a battle, I would give them one. They thought they had silenced me, but the truth was already alive inside my mind. And when the time came, I would unleash it with the force of a storm. Thank you for listening to the second chapter of my story. What comes next will reveal the darkest secrets they never wanted the world to hear. Do not forget to subscribe so you will be here when I expose the truth. And tell me in the comments, have you ever trusted someone who betrayed you? Your story matters too. The walls closed in tighter with each passing hour. The basement was not only cold and dark, it was alive with the echoes of my despair. My stomach growled from hunger, my throat ached with thirst, and every muscle in my body screamed from the unforgiving concrete floor. The shadows pressed against me like invisible chains. For a moment, I wondered if this was exactly what they wanted. Not just my silence, but my slow unraveling. If they could not erase me with forged signatures and false reports, then the basement would finish the job. But I was not ready to let my body become their proof of madness. I forced myself to sit upright, wrapping my arms around my knees to stop the shivers. I whispered into the darkness, not to comfort myself, but to remind myself of who I was. You built this family. You built this house. You will not be buried inside it. That was when I decided the basement would no longer be my prison. It would become my battleground. I began to search. My fingers traced along the shelves, across dusty boxes and forgotten trunks. Cobwebs clung to my hands, and every movement stirred the stale air. I rummaged like a desperate woman, because that is exactly what I was. Then in the far corner, I stumbled upon an old trunk. My husband's initials were carved faintly into the wood, the letters nearly erased by time. My heart skipped a beat. He had kept things here, records, documents, artifacts of his empire. Perhaps hidden among them lay something I could use. I pried it open with the broken shard of wood still clutched in my hand. Inside, I found stacks of papers, some brittle with age, others still sharp and fresh. My trembling hands flipped through them until I froze. They were ledgers, old financial documents, proof of our original investments, bank account numbers, partnerships signed under both our names. My husband had stored them here for safekeeping, and now, locked away, I had something my son and his wife did not expect me to have evidence. But the discovery was not without danger. As I scanned the pages, a chill ran down my spine. Some of the documents bore recent dates. Very recent. Far more recent than my husband's death. I leaned closer, my eyes adjusting to the dim light from the basement slit window. That was when I saw it, my own signature on forms I had never signed. Transfers, loans, asset reallocations, forged. The very proof I needed was in my hands. They had hidden it here, confident I would never find it. The irony struck me like lightning. By locking me in the basement, they had delivered me directly to their crimes, but paper alone would not save me. I needed a voice, proof that could not be dismissed as paranoia or false memory. I turned to the shelves again, searching for anything that could help. My hands brushed against an old cardboard box, and when I lifted the lid, my heart stopped. Inside was a dusty handheld recorder. My husband had once used it for dictating notes late into the night. I pressed the switch with shaking fingers, praying the batteries still had life left in them. A small red light flickered. It worked. For the first time since the door slammed shut, I felt hope stir within me. I lifted it close to my mouth, my voice trembling but steady enough to be heard. My name is Margaret. I have been locked in the basement of my own home by my son's wife. They are conspiring with my son to steal $5 billion from the estate my husband and I built. I have found proof. They forged my signature. They planned to erase me. I paused, my breath ragged. Then I added words that came from the depths of my soul. If you are hearing this, know that I did not stay silent. I fought back. The recorder clicked softly as I turned it off. I clutched it to my chest like a lifeline, knowing that even if I did not survive, my voice would. But the struggle was far from over. The sound of footsteps suddenly echoed above, heavy, deliberate, and moving toward the basement door. My heart slammed against my ribs as the lock rattled. I scrambled to shove the documents back into the trunk, sliding the recorder beneath my jacket just as the door creaked open a fraction. Light spilled down the stairs, slicing through the darkness. Her voice followed, cold and sharp. Still alive down there? I suppose hunger has not broken you yet. Do not worry, it will. The door slammed shut again, the lock snapping back into place. Her laughter trailed off as her footsteps retreated. I exhaled slowly, clutching the recorder so tightly my knuckles whitened. She had no idea I was no longer a helpless prisoner. She had no idea her own lies were recorded in her voice through the walls, and my truth was sealed in this machine. The basement was still dark. I was still hungry. My body still ached, but the balance of power had shifted. They thought the silence would destroy me. Instead, it armed me. When they returned, I would not be empty-handed. I would not be silent. I would be ready. Thank you for listening to this part of my story. The darkness of that basement revealed more than just pain. It uncovered secrets they never wanted me to see. Stay with me, because the next part will reveal how their carefully crafted empire began to crack from the inside. Do not forget to subscribe so you do not miss the truth, and share your story of survival in the comments. Someone else may need your strength today. The documents I found were more than just papers. They were a map, a trail leading from my basement to something far more sinister than family greed. The longer I studied them, the clearer it became. My daughter-in-law was not acting alone. I had once believed she was just a gold digger, a manipulator who charmed my son into betraying me. But as I examined the transactions, a darker truth surfaced. Some of the signatures were not mine, not even forged versions of mine. They belonged to names I had never seen before. Strange corporations, shell accounts, offshore banks and places. My husband and I had never done business. I whispered to myself, my voice trembling, this is bigger than them, much bigger. The flashbacks came uninvited, memories stitched together like a puzzle I had ignored for too long. I remembered the day she first entered my home. Her smile was wide, her voice sweet, but her eyes had been cold. She praised my jewelry, not for its beauty, but for its value. Pieces like these, she said, could fund entire ventures overseas. At the time, I thought she was just making conversation. Now I knew it had been the first breadcrumb. Then there was the dinner with her family friends. She introduced them as successful entrepreneurs. Their laughter was loud, their stories grand, but their eyes darted too, often to the paintings on my walls, to the wine cellar list, to the silver cutlery. One of them even slipped and called me the bank. They all laughed it off, but I never forgot the way she tightened her grip on my son's hand under the table, and the gala. The night she disappeared for hours, claiming she had gone to the ladies' room. Later, I overheard her speaking on the phone in hushed tones, whispering about transfers and dead weight. She cut the call when she saw me and smiled, saying she had been arranging flowers for the event. I forced myself to believe her. Now I realized she had been arranging far more than flowers. The documents confirmed it. They revealed patterns of laundering money through charities, using fake foundations as cover. Millions had vanished in 2 children's hospitals that did not exist, into educational programs that never opened, and there, in bold letters, was her name linked directly to those accounts. But what chilled me most was not her signature. It was my son's beside it. I slammed the papers against the floor, my body shaking with rage. "You dragged him into this," I whispered into the darkness. "Or maybe he went willingly. Either way, you are not just thieves. You are criminals." As I pieced together the puzzle, the scale of the conspiracy came into focus. This was not about stealing from me alone. It was about using my family's empire to fuel an entire network. My inheritance was their gateway into laundering billions, hiding money in places where no one would think to look. I felt sick, but I also felt something else: power. The ledgers were not just evidence of betrayal. They were evidence of crime. Crimes that stretched far beyond my basement. That was when the twist came. In the corner of one ledger, scribbled hastily in the margin, was a note. "Contact CR. Once funds are secured, do not leave a trace." CR. I knew those initials. They belonged to a man my husband once warned me about, a businessman who had vanished after being accused of embezzling fortunes from his partners. A man with ties to organized crime. A man whose name I had hoped never to hear again. My blood ran cold. She was not just a manipulator. She was a conduit. My daughter-in-law had delivered my family's wealth into the hands of a criminal network that spanned continents. I pressed the recorder's button, my voice steady despite my racing heart. "This is Margaret. I have discovered proof that my daughter-in-law is working with known criminals. She is laundering money through fake charities. She has forged my signature. She and my son have tied themselves to a man known only as CR, a fugitive, a criminal mastermind. If something happens to me, know this: the conspiracy goes beyond family betrayal. It is a network of corruption, and my fortune is their weapon." I clicked it off and hugged it close. The recorder now held more than my story. It held the seed of their downfall. The footsteps returned sooner than I expected. The door rattled, and this time it opened just enough for her shadow to stretch into the basement. She leaned down, her smile dripping with cruelty. "Still breathing? Good. You will need the energy. Tomorrow we begin transferring the last of the funds." Her words were meant to terrify me, but instead, they fueled my resolve. I clutched the recorder beneath my jacket, the documents hidden safely behind me. She thought I was broken. She thought I was powerless. But I had already seen through her mask. I had already traced her crimes to the network that would one day destroy her, and I would make sure the world saw it too. Thank you for listening to this part of my story. The conspiracy runs deeper than I ever imagined, but I am not done yet. Stay with me, because what comes next will show how even in the darkest prison, the truth can burn brighter than any lie. Subscribe so you do not miss what happens when I turn their own crimes against them. And tell me in the comments, what would you do if the people you loved most became the monsters at your door? The trick to survival was simple: let them believe they had already won. When the door creaked open again and she slid in a tray with stale bread and a bottle of water, I slumped against the wall, eyes half closed, body limp. My hands trembled just enough to look frail. I made my breathing shallow, uneven, like a woman on the edge of collapse. She chuckled, her voice dripping with satisfaction. "Soon, Margaret, you will not even be able to stand. Then you will be nothing more than the crazy old woman everyone already believes you are." Her words stung, but I did not flinch. I let the mask of weakness drape over me. I let her think the basement was killing me. In truth, every moment she underestimated me was a weapon in my hands. I ate the bread slowly, drank the water in sips, and listened carefully. Every visit gave me fragments of their plan, and every fragment was fuel. My recorder, hidden beneath loose boards, captured her cruel taunts and incriminating words, but the real revelation came not from her arrogance, but from the box of papers I had not yet fully explored. One night, while the house above fell silent, I spread the documents across the basement floor, my lantern flickering over them. Most were financial records, but in one folder I found something different. Medical reports. My name was typed neatly across the top. Diagnoses I had never received. Notes from psychiatrists I had never met. Paranoid tendencies. Delusional episodes. Unfit to manage financial responsibilities. My breath caught in my throat. They had gone further than theft. They had staged my madness. I turned page after page, each one filled with lies. Testimonies from doctors I had never spoken to. Evaluations describing incidents that never happened. According To these records, I had been hallucinating for years. I had been violent. I had been dangerous to myself and others. The final report recommended institutionalization. Tears blurred my vision as I whispered into the silence. They wanted the world to think I was insane. So when I disappeared, no one would ask questions. No one would believe me if I ever returned. I pressed my hand against my chest, my heart pounding in rage and grief. They had not only tried to steal my wealth, they had tried to erase my sanity, my very identity, but the rage sharpened me. I lifted the recorder and pressed the button. This is Margaret. I have found proof that my son and his wife falsified medical records to declare me mentally unfit. They have created lies about paranoia, delusions, and violence. I am of sound mind. I am recording this to expose their deception. They want me to vanish, but I will not vanish quietly. The red light blinked, capturing every word. The next morning, when she returned, I played my role to perfection. I staggered toward the tray she pushed inside, my steps clumsy, my voice weak. She smirked, satisfied at the sight. Pitiful. They will not question a thing when we say you lost yourself years ago. She turned to leave, but I forced a trembling whisper. Why are you doing this to me? For a moment, she paused. She leaned down, her voice low and venomous. Because no one believes the ramblings of a madwoman. You will die in this basement, and history will remember you as unfit. And I will stand in your place, controlling everything you built. I let tears spill down my face, not from weakness, but from the power of truth. She had confessed, and my recorder tucked safely under my sleeve caught every word. That night, I lay on the cold floor, staring at the ceiling, my body exhausted but my spirit ablaze. I thought of my son, my flesh and blood, who had allowed this nightmare to happen. Had he signed those reports too? Had he sat in some polished office, nodding as strangers declared his mother unfit for the empire she built? The betrayal cut deeper than any chain, but betrayal could also be turned into proof. I began to whisper every memory into the recorder. Every conversation, every suspicious glance, every night she disappeared to make her calls. I pieced together the story of my downfall, not as a victim, but as a survivor chronicling the conspiracy from the inside. And with every recording, the web grew clearer. The day would come when they opened the door, expecting to find a broken woman. But when that day came, they would not find a prisoner. They would find a witness. They would find their lies shattered. Thank you for listening to this part of my story. The chains they forged around me were built from lies, but I am breaking them one by one. Stay with me, because the next chapter reveals how an unexpected ally helped me turn weakness into strength. Do not forget to subscribe so you never miss the truth, and share in the comments, have you ever been called something you are not, just so someone else could take what was yours? The basement had become a world of shadows and whispers, but one night, a sound pierced through the silence that was unlike any I had heard before. It was not the heavy footsteps of my daughter-in-law, nor the careful tread of my son. This sound was lighter, hesitant, almost nervous. I held my breath as the lock clicked softly. The door opened only a crack. A thin beam of light swept across the floor. Then a hushed voice followed. Madam Margaret, are you alive? My heart surged. That voice, I knew it. It was Clara, the housekeeper who had served our family for nearly 2 decades. She was loyal, quiet, often overlooked, but I had trusted her with more secrets than anyone else. Yes, I whispered back, my voice hoarse from thirst and exhaustion. I am alive. Please, come in before they hear. The door slipped open wider, and she darted inside, shutting it quickly behind her. In the dim light, I saw her eyes brim with tears as she looked at me. They told everyone you had gone away for treatment, she whispered. But I knew something was wrong. I have been waiting for a chance to reach you. Her words struck like lightning. They had told the staff I was in treatment. The lies ran even deeper than I imagined. Clara, listen to me, I said urgently, gripping her hand. They forged documents. They want the fortune. They want me gone. I have proof. You must help me. Her hands trembled, but she nodded firmly. I will. From beneath her apron, she pulled out a small object and pressed it into my palm. A phone. My eyes widened. It was not the latest model, just an old one with a cracked screen. But in that moment it was more precious than gold. I cannot let them see it with you, she whispered, but hide it well. If you can find a signal, you can reach someone who will believe you. Hope flared inside me like fire. For the first time, I had a line to the outside world, but before I could thank Her footsteps echoed upstairs. My daughter-in-law's laughter rang out, sharp and cruel. Clara froze, her eyes wide. You must act weak, she urged. Do not let them know I came. She slipped out the door as quickly as she had entered, closing it behind her just moments. Before the lock rattled again, the basement filled with light as the door swung open. My daughter-in-law stood there, a smile painted across her face. Still alive, I see. Barely, she said, tossing a new tray of scraps toward me. Don't worry, mother. Soon you will have no need for food at all. I slumped back against the wall, feigning defeat, hiding the phone beneath my sleeve. She smirked, satisfied with the illusion of my weakness, and left without another glance. When the door shut, I wasted no time. My fingers shook as I powered on the phone. The screen flickered to life, dim but functional. I scrolled quickly, searching for a signal. For a long, agonizing moment, there was nothing but the empty bars of disconnection. Then one faint line appeared. I held my breath and dialed the only number I trusted, Mr. Harlan, my husband's old lawyer, the man who had drafted our estate documents. It rang once, twice, 3 times. Then a voice answered, groggy but familiar. Hello, Harlan, it's me, I whispered urgently. It's Margaret. They've locked me in the basement. They are stealing everything. I have proof documents, recordings. You must believe me. There was a stunned silence on the line. Then his voice sharpened. Margaret? Dear God. They said you were unwell, that you were institutionalized. That is their lie, I hissed. Listen to me. They forged medical reports. They want the world to think I am insane, but I am not. I have proof. Please help me before it's too late. His voice was low and steady. Hold on. Do not give up. I will find a way to get to you, but you must be careful. If they suspect you contacted me, they will end everything faster. The line crackled, then cut off. The signal was gone. My heart pounded. I had reached someone outside there. Web of lies, but fate is never merciful. Just as I slipped the phone back under the loose floorboard, the door burst open again. This time it was not her. It was my son. His face was pale, his eyes hollow, but his voice carried the weight of a man, convinced of his own righteousness. Mother, why are you doing this to yourself? You cannot accept that you are sick, that you need help. The lie stabbed deeper than any knife. I forced myself to stay silent, to let him believe I was too weak to argue. But inside, I was screaming. He stepped closer, crouching in front of me, his eyes cold. Do not fight us. You will only make it worse. Soon, no one will even remember your version of events, only ours. I let my head drop, feigning defeat. He sighed in satisfaction, then turned to leave. What he did not know was that my recorder, hidden in the folds of my clothing, had captured every word. That night, I sat in the darkness, my body aching, but my mind sharper than ever. I had allies now, Clara on the inside, Harlan on the outside, and my own will burning like fire through the cold. They thought the walls of the basement would silence me, but walls cannot contain the truth. Thank you for listening to this part of my story. The cracks in their empire are beginning to show, and I am finding strength in unexpected places. Stay with me, because the next chapter will reveal the turning point, the moment when silence is no longer enough and the fight begins. Subscribe so you never miss it, and share in the comments, have you ever found an ally when you least expected it? The day I stopped trembling was the day I stopped being their prisoner. The basement that once felt like a tomb became my battlefield. Every corner, every crack in the wall, every loose board was no longer a reminder of my suffering, it was a weapon waiting to be used. I remembered my husband's words long ago, when we built this house. A fortress can protect you, Margaret, but it can also become your cage if you do not know its secrets. Now those words were my salvation. Clara continued to slip me scraps of food and whispered updates whenever she could, but I knew she risked her life each time. I could not rely on her forever. I had to strike back before they decided my time was up. So I began to prepare. I tore strips from the ragged blanket, twisting them into a crude rope. I pried loose nails from the wooden floorboards and sharpened them against the stone wall until their edges glinted in the lantern light. I used the broken tray they had tossed at me weeks ago, its jagged corner now fashioned into a makeshift blade. And then there was the final piece of my plan, the recordings. Every confession, every cruel word, every damning phrase had been carefully captured. I hid the recorder inside a hollowed-out section of the wall, safe from their searches. The trap was ready. All I needed was for her arrogance to bring her close. That night, I heard the key turn in the lock, but it was not the heavy, careless footsteps of my son. It was her. She stepped inside, her perfume sharp in the damp air, her smile curved like a knife. She carried a flashlight, its beam cutting through the shadows as she looked me over. "You look worse every day," she said mockingly. "Good. Soon you will not be able to speak at all, and then we will be free of your endless accusations." I let my body sag forward, my voice weak. "Water," I whispered. "Please." She laughed. "Begging suits you, Margaret." She set the flashlight on a shelf and leaned closer, her hand reaching out as if to lift my chin in mock sympathy. That was the moment I had been waiting for. With a sudden burst of strength, I pulled the rope of blanket from behind me and looped it around her wrist, yanking hard. She cried out, stumbling forward as I twisted her arm behind her back. The flashlight tumbled to the floor, its beam spinning wildly across the walls. She struggled, furious, but I pressed the sharpened tray edge to her neck. "Not another word," I hissed in her ear, my voice steady with rage. "You thought you locked me in a cage. You thought you broke me, but you forgot one thing: I built this family, and I will not be erased by you." Her breath came in panicked gasps. You are insane." I tightened the rope around her wrist until she whimpered. "Say that again, and I will carve the truth into your skin." For the first time, I saw fear in her eyes. Real fear. I dragged her closer to the recorder hidden in the wall. "Do you hear that sound?" I said, letting her see the red light blinking in the darkness. "That is every word you have ever spoken, every threat, every confession, every lie. And when the world hears it, they will not see me as insane. They will see you as the monster you are." She froze, her body trembling against mine. "You wouldn't know, but I would," I whispered. "And I already have." For a moment, the silence between us was thick enough to choke on. Then, with sudden violence, she kicked backward, slamming her heel into my shin. I cried out, loosening my grip just enough for her to twist free. She scrambled for the flashlight, but I grabbed her ankle and yanked her to the ground. The two of us struggled on the cold concrete, the light spinning around us, our shadows leaping across the walls like battling demons. Finally, she ripped herself free and darted for the door, slamming it behind her as her screams echoed upstairs. I stood there, my chest heaving, my body shaking, but my heart blazing with triumph. For the first time, she had felt my strength. For the first time, she had known fear. And though she escaped, I had won something far greater: power. Because now she knew I was not broken. Now she knew I was not insane. Now she knew the prisoner had become the hunter. I pressed the recorder against my lips and whispered, "They will come for me with fury now, but I am ready. I will not go quietly. The tables have turned. Thank you for listening to this part of my story. You have stood with me in the shadows, and soon you will see the light as I fight back against the lies that sought to bury me. Stay with me, because the next chapter is the confrontation they never expected." Subscribe so you do not miss it. And tell me in the comments, have you ever found the courage to stand up when everyone expected you to stay down? The night after I turned the tables, the air inside the basement grew heavy with anticipation. I knew they would not let my act of defiance go unanswered. Pride is a poison, and my daughter-in-law was drowning in it. She would come back, but this time not to gloat, this time to destroy. I did not sleep. I stood in the shadows, my sharpened tray hidden behind me, my recorder secured in the hollow wall, and the phone clutched close to my chest. For once, I did not feel like prey. I felt like a storm waiting to break. At dawn, the lock rattled violently. The door flew open, and both of them entered: my son and his wife, united in their cruelty. They stepped down the stairs slowly, as if savoring their descent into my prison. But I was not on the floor where they expected me, curled like a dying woman. I was standing, my back straight, my chin lifted, my eyes burning with the fire of every wound they had inflicted. My daughter-in-law froze mid-step. My son's face drained of color. "You look surprised," I said, my voice cutting through the silence like a blade. "You thought I would die in the dark. Instead, I found the truth." My daughter-in-law sneered, trying to mask her unease. "The truth? You are delirious, Margaret. You have nothing." That was when I raised my hand and revealed the recorder. The little red light blinked steadily, each pulse like the beat of war drums. "This," I declared, "is your voice. Every threat, every scheme, every word of your betrayal. And when the world hears it, You will not stand in my place, you will stand in chains." The color drained from her face. My son took a step forward, his voice strained. "Mother, stop this madness. You do not know what you are saying." I turned to him, my eyes piercing his. "I know exactly what I am saying. You lied to the world. You told them I was sick. You let her put me in chains so you could have your billions. You forgot who raised you. You forgot who I am." I lifted the sharpened tray, its jagged edge glinting in the light. "Do not mistake me for weak. If either of you steps closer, you will leave this room bleeding." For a moment, they both stood frozen, caught between disbelief and terror. Then my daughter-in-law broke into a bitter laugh. "You think a toy like that will save you? You think anyone will believe the ramblings of a senile old woman?" Her words echoed in the room, but before I could respond, another sound joined. A voice, clear and strong, coming from the tiny phone I had hidden behind me. "Margaret," the lawyer's voice boomed through the speaker, "we are recording everything right now. Every word, every threat. The authorities have been notified." Their faces collapsed into shock. My son staggered back, his hand gripping the railing as if the ground had given way beneath him. My daughter-in-law's bravado cracked, her eyes darting toward the door, toward escape, but I stepped forward, the tray raised. "No one is escaping. Not today. Not ever." I pressed the phone higher, letting the lawyer's words fill the basement. "I warned you," I said coldly. "I told you walls cannot contain the truth. And now the truth is spilling into the world." My daughter-in-law lunged suddenly, desperate to snatch the recorder from my hand. But I swung the tray upward, the sharp edge slicing across her arm. She shrieked, stumbling back, clutching the wound as blood seeped between her fingers. "You will never hold my fortune," I spat. "You will never bury me." For the first time, my son's mask shattered. His voice trembled as he shouted, "Stop this, mother. Stop before you ruin everything." I fixed my gaze on him, the boy I once rocked to sleep, now a stranger who had sold me for greed. "I am not the one who ruined everything," I whispered. "You did." Silence followed, thick with the weight of betrayal and fear. They could see it now, their empire of lies was collapsing, brick by brick, under the weight of my defiance, and I stood before them not as their prisoner, but as their reckoning. Thank you for listening to this chapter of my story. The confrontation has begun, but the war is not over. In the next part, the walls of this house will echo with the footsteps of justice, and the truth will finally break free. Stay with me, subscribe so you never miss what happens next, and tell me in the comments, have you ever seen arrogance crumble in the face of truth? The basement door slammed shut behind them as if the house itself was sealing their fate. I stood there gripping the recorder, my heart pounding not with fear but with anticipation, because I knew what was coming next. The rumble of engines shattered the silence outside. Tires crunched against the gravel drive. Floodlights cut through the windows, slicing across the walls. Then came the heavy pounding of fists against the front door. "Federal Bureau of Investigation, open up immediately." My son's face went white. My daughter-in-law clutched her bleeding arm, her eyes wide with horror. "This cannot be happening," she whispered. "You said no one would ever find out." But it was happening. Every step of my plan was unfolding exactly as I had prepared. Clara had delivered the recordings to my lawyer. My lawyer had gone straight to the authorities. The moment I triggered the call on the hidden phone, the operation had begun. The front door burst open. Armed agents flooded the house, their voices commanding, their boots shaking the floor. My son stumbled back up the basement stairs, shouting, "Wait, you don't understand." But the agents understood far better than he ever imagined. Two men in dark suits stormed down the stairs, followed by my lawyer, his face grim and determined. Behind them came another figure, a woman from the Financial Crimes Division, carrying a thick file of documents. "Margaret," my lawyer said firmly, "you are safe now. We have everything we need." I lifted the recorder high, my voice strong. "Hear every word, every confession, every threat they used to break me." The agent seized it, nodding sharply. "We already have matching files from your lawyer. This will lock the case beyond doubt." My daughter-in-law shrieked, lunging forward. "No, that evidence is a lie. She is insane. You cannot believe her." But the female investigator stepped forward, slamming the thick file onto the table. She flipped it open, revealing bank statements, shell company records, wire transfers across international accounts. "Clara gave us access to the hidden safe in your study," she said coldly. Every false identity, every offshore account, every dollar you tried to launder from Margaret's inheritance. It is over. The room fell silent, the weight of the truth crushing down like a hammer. My son staggered forward, desperation in his eyes. No, please, you do not understand. I did this for us, for the family, for greed. I interrupted, my voice sharp as steel. You did it for greed, nothing more. The agent pulled a set of cuffs from his belt. Sir, you are under arrest for conspiracy, fraud, unlawful imprisonment, and financial crimes exceeding $5 billion. The clink of the cuffs echoed like a final judgment. My son's head bowed as his wrists were bound. He did not look at me. He could not. Then it was her turn. My daughter-in-law fought like a wild animal, thrashing, screaming, her voice cracking. You cannot do this to me. That money was mine. She was supposed to die. She was supposed to. Her words were cut off as the agents forced her hands behind her back. The cuffs snapped closed. I stepped forward, my eyes burning into hers. You tried to bury me in the dark, but I rose, and the world saw you for what you are. A thief, a liar, a coward. She spat at my feet as they dragged her up the stairs, her screams fading into the distance. The house that once imprisoned me was now filled with the sound of justice. Agents moved swiftly, photographing evidence, hauling out boxes of documents, cataloging weapons hidden in the walls. My lawyer touched my shoulder gently. You did it, Margaret. You exposed them. Without you, none of this would have come to light. I felt tears sting my eyes, but they were not tears of sorrow. They were tears of release. For the first time in weeks, I felt the chains fall from my spirit. The empire of lies they built on my suffering had collapsed in a single night. But even as I stood there, free at last, I knew the final chapter had not yet been written. Justice had begun, but the reckoning was not complete. There were still trials to be faced, truths to be told, scars to be carried, and I was ready. Thank you for listening to this part of my story. You stood with me in the darkness, and now you have seen the dawn of justice. The trials are coming. The final reckoning is near, and the lesson will echo louder than any chains. Stay with me for the final chapter. Subscribe now, and tell me in the comments, do you believe that truth always finds a way to break free? The courtroom was silent, but the silence was not empty. It was heavy, charged with the weight of truth finally standing tall against the lies that had sought to bury it. My son sat at the defense table, his head bowed, his once confident shoulders slumped under the weight of betrayal exposed. Beside him, his wife stared straight ahead, her jaw tight, her hands trembling despite the chains around her wrists. They were no longer predators. They were prisoners of their own greed. The judge's gavel struck. Guilty on all counts, sentenced to 40 years each, without parole. The words rippled through the room, final and immovable. I closed my eyes. For weeks I had dreamed of this moment. I had wondered if justice could ever pierce through the walls of corruption, through the layers of betrayal, through the web of lies spun by the people I had once called family. Now I had my answer. But justice did not come with triumph. It came with a bittersweet ache. My son, the boy I raised, the boy whose hand once clung to mine, was gone, lost to the abyss of greed. His wife had devoured his conscience and his soul, but he chose to let her. That was his betrayal, and that was his downfall. As they were led away in chains, I felt no joy, only a solemn strength, a knowledge that truth had prevailed, not because it was easy, but because I refused to surrender. Reporters swarmed the courthouse steps as I walked out, their cameras flashing, their voices calling my name. Margaret, Margaret, how did you survive? How did you expose them? I lifted my head high, my voice steady. I survived because I refused to be silenced. I exposed them because truth cannot live in darkness. No matter how deep the lies, truth will always find its way to the light. The crowd erupted, their pens scribbling, their cameras capturing every word. But I was no longer speaking only to them. I was speaking to the world. To anyone who had ever been betrayed, trapped, or silenced. That night, I returned to my home not as a prisoner, but as its rightful owner. The basement where they had tried to bury me was sealed, its door locked, forever. But I did not seal it in shame. I sealed it as a monument, a reminder that even in the darkest of places, light can be found if you fight for it. I walked through the halls, past the portraits of my ancestors, past the echoes of laughter that once filled these rooms. My family name was scarred, but it was not broken. Because I was still standing, because I refused to fall, I sat by the window, watching the sunrise stretch across the horizon. Its golden rays touch the earth gently, as if whispering, "You endured, you survived, you are free." And in that moment, I realized that freedom was not just the absence of chains. It was the strength to rise after betrayal. It was the courage to face the truth. It was the unshakable belief that no one, not even those you love, has the right to steal your voice. So this is my message to you. If you are listening, if you are watching, if you are reading these words, never surrender your truth. Greed can shatter bonds, betrayal can cut deep, but strength will always carry you through. Justice was served, not because the world is perfect, but because I stood my ground. And so can you. Thank you for standing with me through this journey. You have seen the greed, the betrayal, the conspiracy, and the fall. But more than that, you have seen resilience. You have seen how one voice can break the silence of chains. This is Margaret, and my story is complete. Thanks for listening. Don't forget to subscribe and share your story in the comments, because every voice matters. Every truth deserves to be heard. And sometimes the stories we share are the very light that helps someone else escape the dark.